Okay, welcome to part 1, word definitions and meanings. Now, you read that about your unalienable rights. It's imperative that you understand that your unalienable rights or unalienable rights are the highest form of rights that you can have. They were given to you by your Creator, endowed to you. You cannot give them away. They cannot be taken away from you. They are your rights. And that's the highest form that it comes in. And that was stated in the Declaration of Independence in 1776. Now, here's where the controversy, or I don't want to say, but conspiracy comes in. They say unalienable and inalienable rights are one and the same. But the argument is that they are not. And here's what is said about that. Inalienable rights. Rights which are not capable of being surrendered or transferred without the consent of the one possessing such rights. Morrison versus State. You can surrender, sell, or transfer inalienable rights if you consent, either actually or constructively. Inalienable rights are not inherent in man and can be alienated by government. Persons have inalienable rights. Most state constitutions recognize only inalienable rights. So they're saying that you can give that up as an inalienable right, but not as an unalienable right. So there you go with the trickery of the terminology. You got to know the difference. Now let me point out to you and explain to you about the trickery of words. These people are masters of it. Let me give you a real example. Now, there was a book that I had entitled America's Secret Destiny. The book was stolen at a very high-profile celebrity's home in which I worked one day, and I'm not happy about it because the book has not been returned to me and it was clearly stolen. The whys and the whos, who knows? But at any rate, in that book deals with a lot of this type of things or types of things. What it was stating in there, and I was reading it really for the first time, it was explaining how Ben Franklin was talking or explaining how, or it was explaining how the trickery was of tricking people with words and things. Let me give you the example. I don't remember it exactly, but it goes something like this. In this, Ben Franklin during the time, whatever it was, 1780 something, was asking for something like, I'm not sure, the government or whatever, or people to help with paying for something. And he was saying, we need this amount of grains in order to help the people to continue with what we're doing. Well, he was saying grains. And people were assuming or thinking that he was talking about as in grains of food. But he was talking about grains of gunpowder. And he was tricking the people by making them think one thing when he was actually meaning another thing. The other example in that same scenario was the people asking the people that we need this amount of fire wagons, I believe was the term. What was he talking about? He was actually talking about that we need the fire wagons to help, you know, in the event that we need to take care of something, whatever. He was talking about cannons. He was referring to the cannons as fire wagons because it's very similar. But you know, they were talking about fire wagons or engines, or at that time they didn't have engines, but when a fire, and you know, when they had the equipment that they used in those days to put out fires. See the trickery? So that's the way they've been doing this for over 200 years, with tricking us with the words of using. And I hope you get that. The next big thing to tell all of you out there, stop fighting for civil rights. Civil rights are a joke. Why? I'm going to tell you why. You know what a civil right is. You want your unalienable rights. Always. Never your civil rights. Why? A civil right is a right given and protected by law. And a person's enjoyment thereof is regulated entirely by law that creates it. Nickel versus Rosenfield, 1927 case. What does that mean? Civil right was given to you by government. It could be taken away by the same government. What are unalienable rights? God endowed rights that the Creator gave you. That cannot be taken away from you. You got to learn these differences and definitions, because this is how they're tricking you. Or us, because I'm part of this too. But I've been studying this stuff for quite a while, and I have a little grasp of a lot of it. The next big area that you have to understand and get is stop calling yourself a person. You are not. In law, there are different words that mean different things at different times. Yes can mean no, no can mean yes. In everyday lingual, yeah, you know, hey man, I'm gonna go drive here, and I'm, you know, hey, I'm a person too, whatever. But when you get into court or you start dealing with governmental issues or things, you cannot use these terminologies. They will incriminate you. Now there are people who say, oh, it's the same, it's one and the same, and it's just, that's that argument. But looking at the evidence in the laws and in the codes and in the whatever, all the different, you know, legal writings and so forth, and papers and quotes and journals, so forth. They listed out here what it means. Now check this out. The word person in legal terminology is perceived as a general word which normally includes in its scope a variety of entities other than human beings. United States of America versus William M. Slater. That was a 1982 case, I believe, in Delaware. See what I'm saying? Individual also ties into this person. The Constitution said, we the people, not we all the persons. There's terminology differences here, folks. And you got to get it. Because this is what they're doing and using to trick us. So, you have to understand or remember the slave master mentality, the master and the slave mentality. They don't want you to know these definitions. Trust me. And this will all start to make sense as we go into the next chapter, because this all ties in with this whole state citizenship stuff, with U.S. citizenship, a federal, a sovereign state, free citizen versus a United States slave, federal corporation citizen. You know, the difference there. And we'll get into all that later. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to cover here. But I just want to give you some of these basic terminologies and understanding the different uses of words. Let's see here. I already hit that. Another thing is your birth certificate. Your birth certificate, federal birth certificate, is another trap. It was what they were using for black slaves during the time of slavery as property. And in today's use, it's for collateral or payment on the federal national fictitious debt. And what they do, it has a serial number on this, and I covered this in my documentary, The Federal Reserve 100th Anniversary, that they use that to enslave you and to make you obligated to the national debt. And the whole capitalization of your name, and let me state that right now, and I also covered that, called the straw man, or the actual terminology is strenumus homo, a man of straw, one of no substance put forward as bail or surety, blacks first. Straw man, person. Oh, there's that word, person. Affront, a third party who is put up in the name only, put up in name only to take part in a transaction in name only. Nominal party to a transaction. Black 6. The term is also used in commercial and property contexts when a transfer is made to a third party. The straw man, person, simply for the proposed purpose, of retransferring to transfer in order to accomplish some other purpose not otherwise permitted. Note, or C note, strenumus homo dummy corporation soul. See what I'm saying? It goes on, but I'm just giving you a general understanding of it. So when they put your name in all caps, look at your birth certificate, look at your driver's license, look at your credit cards, your bank statement, social security number. That's the way they do it, in all caps. Your vehicle registration. That's not you. That's not the live human being. That's the dummy, the straw man. And you must understand this in order to free yourselves, or to at least have the knowledge to know what's happening to you. It's very, very interesting stuff. The next thing, do you have a marriage license? Do you like three-party marriages? Well, what is a marriage license? This is what is stated about that. The state is a party to every marriage contract of its own residence. There's that term, residence, and you'll hear about that in a moment. As well as the guardians of their morals. Roberts versus Roberts, 1947 case. Wow. So the government gets involved in your marriage. That's why you have the CPS on you. And technically, from what I understand, the government can come in and tell you guys, hey, you got to paint your house red, not blue, because you agreed to have a third-party marriage. And your morals, and they set what you can and can't do. That's why certain getting into the sexual acts are illegal in certain states. You can't, I'm not get into that, but what you can and cannot do with your wife or husband. It gets crazy. Ties in, read it. It all fits in, it all makes sense, and it'll make more sense later. But that's what that is. So, now, another thing is that in court, you know, people say I have a right to trial by jury. You really, that's only been recently. That started in 1968. I thought we always had a right to trial by jury. Yeah, if you were a sovereign state citizen, you did. but not as a U.S. citizen, and we'll cover all that. But just interesting things that I'm passing up here in seeing. And it says here, Declaration of Rights. As far as federal due process is concerned, the right to trial by jury in state trials only dates from May 20th, 1968. The date of decisions of Duncan versus Louisiana, Bloom versus Illinois, and Dyke versus Taylor. All of this is just evidence and showing you, this is the stuff I'm making up or someone made up. These were in the law books and different code books that these various groups or this particular group went around and collected over the years, because some of these people like researching and they spend, that's what their hobbies are, is going around finding old law books from the 1800s, the early 1900s, etc. Are you registered to vote? Did you know that when you register to vote, it is permanent until you cancel it? Did you also know that you have a lien on all your property when you register to vote? The registration of a voter is permanent for all purposes during his life, unless and until the affidavit of registration is canceled by the county clerk for any of the causes specified in this article. Now, it gets into some stuff here, because as a sovereign state citizen, you're not really allowed to vote, because it's not the sovereign government you're voting for, but the corrupt regime of the foreign corporation federal government. Now, there's people that say, I don't like it, because then I want to be able to vote in the process, but under the system, as a state citizen, you can't. You just can't. So, and I don't know of any update on that, like if that's changed over the years or what. I don't know. I haven't followed up on that. The next thing I want to get into is your motor vehicle. Well, here we go. Let me hit you this real quick so you can understand and grasp this. Words to understand. Never ever use the word motor vehicle, passengers, driving, resident, or reside. I will start first with the resident, reside. I am a resident of the state of no, not as a sovereign state citizen. That's a word term for a federal foreign U.S. government, the slave government. You are to use the term abode, live, take up house, domicile. Now, in driving, I don't drive. I travel. I journey. I do locomotion. That's what you say. You don't say I have passenger. Hey, I've got 2 passengers. No, I have guests, my friends, my family. Motor vehicle. I use a conveyance. My car. I'm not sure about automobile. I don't know if that's applicable. I'm not sure. Piece of machinery. You never say a motor vehicle. Those are terms deemed for U.S. citizens. Now, I've seen it and been in court where the judge has said, well, you understand that driving is a privilege. And the person's like, I understand that, Your Honor. Yes, sir. He doesn't understand. Because that judge didn't tell you the whole story. He said, driving is a privilege. He only told you half of it. It is true, but only half true. Why? Because if you're a sovereign state citizen, driving doesn't apply to you. Traveling is your right, and it can't be infringed upon. They don't tell you that. And the whole thing here I'm trying to tell you is that when you walk into any governmental agency, and especially court, those people automatically assume that they have jurisdiction over you and I. Unless you stand up and give them or set them straight the fact that you are not under their jurisdiction. Now this argument, like I said, with the whole, some people are saying that you are both a U.S. citizen and a sovereign state citizen at the same time and this and that. I disagree. I've seen the debate and I felt I've made my decision that that is absolute. And we'll get into all that. I keep saying that, but the next chapter gets much deeper. But I just have to give you a basic knowledge or information about word terminologies, because that's how you're getting tricked into this. And you'll see how it all ties together. But those are things that you say. And what is the definition of motor vehicle? Well, let me say this to you. Let me first just read this a little bit to you because it's kind of interesting. This is a summary of a case back in 1914 called Hendricks versus Maryland. Now, Mr. Hendricks was a resident, here we go, it means a U.S. citizen, of the District of Columbia. Everyone understands that the District of Columbia of Washington, D.C., it is not one of the sovereign states, but the United States, and like I said, we'll talk about that. He was a resident of the District of Columbia. He drove his car into Maryland. Maryland had a law that licensed all commercial vehicles, and the citizens of Maryland were exempt from such regulation. Mr. Hendricks was cited and convicted, and he appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court. There, the court ruled that a resident, a U.S. citizen, when they leave the District of Columbia, were involved in interstate commerce. Therefore, they could be regulated and licensed. This regulation did not infringe on the common law right to travel, as they, U.S. citizens, do not have the common law right to travel. Now, the writing on this, what I'm going to read to you, is a little bit, I won't say hard for me to read because it's really kind of small and what have you, but this is, I'm not sure, this was taken out of a legal book or Matters of Application of Stork. But anyway, in the matter of the applications of Charles Stork for a writ of habeas corpus, check this out. Here it says, in classification of drivers of motor vehicles, whether reasonable. The Motor Vehicle Act, Stats 1913, page 639, is not unconstitutional as making an arbitrary and unwarranted classification, in that it requires professional chauffeurs or drivers of motor vehicles for hire to pay an annual license tax, but exempts all other operators of such vehicles from such tax and regulation. See how they broke that up? They're talking about the latter part replies or refers to citizens, sovereign state citizens. So, what's the definition of a motor vehicle? This is what they say. Motor vehicle means every description of carriage or other contrivance propelled or drawn by mechanical power and used for commercial purposes on the highways, in the transportation of passengers or passengers and property. What does that mean? When you drive from point A to B, work to home, the government is looking at you as property, or let's say a package being delivered on the interstate, involved in interstate commerce, official use. That's the way they're looking at it, as a U.S. citizen with their driver's license. Now, years ago in California, on your vehicle sticker that you stick on the back of your car every year when you register your car, it used to have, it was very faint, but I remember it, and I wish I had kept one. But you could see, if you go back to like 94, 5, if somebody has a license plate from them and they have that sticker on there, you should be able to see it if you look closely. But very faint in the background, it said official use, or official use only, something like that. Or now when you see cars that are government cars on the street, they don't have stickers on them. It says the plate on there, official use only, or official use. Why? What does that mean? The government owns it. That's their car. That's what you were putting on there when you stuck that on there, that this is a government-owned car. Trickery. See what I'm talking about? I hope you're beginning to understand and see all of this and how this all is starting to make sense. Now, there's so much more about all of this, and I'm just skimming over to hit some of these important, terminologies for you, so that you understand what I'm trying to tell you. There's a lot here, believe me. There's just something else I kind of wanted to read to you, and we're going to run into it again anyway, but bear with me. Right here. I forget what the CJS stands for, but I forget. California Justice Systems or whatever. But this is what states in here. It's very interesting. And let me say this to you. Can any corporation have its own citizens? No. They can only have franchises of the corporation. Have you ever heard of the Franchise Tax Board? I certainly have. You guys out there know that. And for those of you that know my battles with them, you might find that a little bit funny, but not really. But did you know that the United States government is a foreign corporation as it relates to the state common law? Here it goes. In this journal, it says the United States government is a foreign corporation with respects to a state. 13. And it goes into the cases and so forth. I just thought that was pretty interesting. We'll cover all that later. The other area too to talk to you about, and I'm not even going to get deep into it, but your property. When you own your home, you think, or land, you think you own it. You don't. And this is what they're saying that the American Revolution was about, was property rights. And they're saying that the prime reason for changing your status from a citizen and member of the sovereignty to that of a U.S. citizen who is of subject status and does not have the right of property, only the right of possession and ownership. It requires all three to have land in the lodium. You must have your land and own it in the lodium. What is that? Most of you've never heard of it. You real estate agents and people who are claiming you're real estate masters and this and that. How many of you know this? What does allodio mean? Free, no holding of any lord or superior, owned without obligation, or I can't read this word, vassalage or fealty. I don't know what that means, but the opposite of feudal. Barker versus Dayton. Allodium, land held absolutely in one's own right and not of any lord or superior. Land not subject to feudal duties or burdens. An estate held by absolute ownership without recognizing any superior to whom any duty is due on account thereof. It's deep. I'll let you marinate on that. Remember, land is not property. All the land in the 13 colonies was given to people in allodium. When you have land in allodium, you do not have to pay property tax. You cannot take a mortgage out on it. It can never be taken away from you, as it is yours and your posterity's. This is what this is all about. Taking everything from us, breaking us. And we have fallen for it. We have been so indoctrinated with lies, miseducation, that we've fallen for this. Alright, we spent enough time on this, and I want to move on and get into some other stuff. But before I do that, I want to kind of read to you something that's kind of funny, but this is an actual real thing that occurred. Let me read this to you. This was a standard screening questions. These questions were administered by Mr. Alberto Gutierrez, Deputy Administrator, Arizona Department of Transportation, at approximately 2:00 p.m. on August 24th, 1989. After confirming that Mr. Cooper had met with Mr. Carl Davis, the Governor's Special Assistant over state agencies. Mr. Gutierrez, before we go any further, I need to ask you our standard screening questions. Question number 1, Mr. Gutierrez. Are you a citizen of the United States? Mr. Cooper's answer, no, I am not. Question number 2, Mr. Gutierrez says, are you a resident of Arizona? Mr. Cooper's answer, no, I'm not. I was born in Phoenix. I have lived in Maricopa County all my life, but I am not a resident. I do not reside. Mr. Gutierrez, question number 3. Are you registered to vote? Mr. Cooper's answer, no, I am not. Question number 4, Mr. Gutierrez, do you have a driver's license? Mr. Cooper's answer, no, I do not. Question number 5, Mr. Gutierrez, do you have any motor vehicles registered in Arizona? Mr. Cooper's answer, no, I do not. Question number 6, Mr. Gutierrez, are you employed? Mr. Cooper's answer, no, I am not. I am not employed. I am not unemployed. I am not self-employed. I am not gainfully employed. In fact, I am not employable. But I work. Besides, Arizona is a right-to-work state. Mr. Gutierrez nodded his head in agreement and went on. Question number 7, Mr. Gutierrez, do you pay state and federal resident income taxes? Mr. Cooper's answer, no, I do not. Question number 8, Mr. Gutierrez, do you pay property taxes in Arizona? Mr. Cooper's answer, no, I do not. Mr. Gutierrez, do you have a marriage license? Mr. Cooper's answer, no, I do not. Question number 10, Mr. Gutierrez, do you have children enrolled in public school? Mr. Cooper's answer, no, I do not. My children are home taught. Mr. Gutierrez then said, you've really done your homework. I like that. So, you see what I'm saying? The terminologies are very important, and I forgot to mention one last part, and we'll get into all this later once again, but it's important. The employee-employer relationship. The legal definition of employee is working for the government. The legal definition of employer is government or government-protected workplace. The W-4 form is a Class 5 gift tax form. By signing this, I am stating that I am receiving the gift of employment from the government. So everything I receive is profit or gain as a U.S. citizen. So right there, I hope that people, that you all out there are getting this and understanding this. And the whole purpose and point of all of this is this. You've got to reclaim your sovereign, free being, human being, self. Not person. Not falling under the U.S. slave of being a person. And like I said, we'll get into the whole state citizen in the next part, but basically it works like this. You want to use whatever terminology you can to describe yourself as being that free sovereign being. Not having an allegiance or being owned by anyone. I'm saying God, man, beast, whatever. But as a sovereign comes responsibility for your own life and actions. Because every day out here I see people who are acting like fools and not being responsible for themselves. Blaming others and blaming this and that. Yes, these people are out there and they are hindering our life and so forth, but that doesn't give you the excuse to say, oh, well, this, and you know, it doesn't matter or whatever. Be responsible for yourself. Okay? And this whole thing, it's all about freedom. So if somebody's telling you, well, that's not true, and what's the difference, and who cares, or whatever, ask them. So do you want to be a slave, or do you want to be free? What is it? What is it that the government's trying to say to me? I'm telling you that I'm this free, sovereign human being. That as long, and this is what we say about being a sovereign citizen, that you are responsible for your own life and actions. As long as you do not infringe on the rights of others or damage their property, or in this term, person, you don't inflict bodily harm on that person or that being. We could say that, I guess. And keep all agreements entered into knowingly, willingly, and voluntarily. As long as you're doing that, you are operating in the free spirit of sovereignty of your human self. So, with that in mind, stay tuned for part 2, state citizenship versus U.S. citizenship.